A Senate committee report has recommended the Gillard government increase transparency and accountability in the not-for-profit sector.
The committee has recommended a national commission to monitor whether charities maintain their tax-free status. Senator Annette Hurley is the chair of the Senate committee report into the not-for-profit sector, and she joins us now from Canberra. Senator Hurley, good morning.
Good morning, Michael.
Why should there be much greater accountability by the not-for-profit sector?
Well, there's been a long question about transparency and accountability, but also advice and assistance to the not-for-profit sector. Senator Xenophon introduced a bill that brought into a question the public benefit and whether there should be some sort of test inserted in the Tax Act. But the committee decided that that was perhaps too narrow a focus and that there should be a broader focus on the general transparency and accountability of the sector generally.
How much of this report and its recommendations are focused on the Church of Scientology, obviously an organisation that's driving a lot of Senator Nick Xenophon's campaigning in Parliament?
Well, I think that's what drove Senator Xenophon, but the bill he introduced was a more general bill about a public benefit test for religions and charities generally. Now, we've had a number of inquiries in this, including the Henry Tax Review, and it just seemed that there was an impetus from regulatory bodies, but also for the not-for-profit sector themselves, to have a dedicated commission to look at that sector, to provide advice and assistance as well as monitoring.
Do you believe, in particular, though, that there should be a much greater scrutiny of the Church of Scientology, given the various allegations made over the past few months about the way that particular organisation operates?
Well, the committee heard a number of submissions, either for and against acting against the Church of Scientology, but we felt we were unable to make a decision about that. A lot of the issues raised were matters for the courts. We didn't have the investigative ability to go into that in great detail, but we found that neither does the tax office, who are about revenue collection, and yet currently they're the ones in charge of looking at these kind of issues in order to determine tax deductibility status of religions and charities.
Now, one of your fellow committee members, Doug Cameron, said that he was staggered that no one could tell your committee the actual value of the overall tax concessions churches and charities receive as part of their tax-free status. Are you also perplexed about that?
Well, I think it's one of the things that we found, one of the pieces of information that is very difficult to collect about not-for-profit sector in Australia, and one of the reasons why we recommended that a commission be set up. But I think in regard to that, it's very clear from a number of our inquiries that although that tax exemption money is sitting there and we don't know quite how much it was, I think it's very clear that there is a net public benefit for the work that charities perform. Charities perform a lot of work that the government would probably otherwise have to pick up, and I think the money that the government forsakes in terms of tax exemption would be well and truly made up in terms of not being required to provide the services that a lot of charities do.
Do you worry your recommendations, particularly the one dealing with the setting up of a charities commission, could simply fall through the cracks in this new hung parliament with so many other agendas on the horizon?
No, I don't see why it should. There is wide agreement among the not-for-profit sector that we should do this. We've had a series of inquiries now, 4 or 5 inquiries. The Economics Committee itself did an inquiry only 2 or so years ago. It was looked at by the Henry Tax Review and looked at by the Productivity Commission. They all recommended that this kind of commission should be set up. I think it's now getting quite urgent. The UK has had a commission for some years. New Zealand has had a commission for some years, and it's clear that those commissions are working very well for the benefit of religions and charities, as well as as developing confidence by the public in that sector. Is
there a particular model that you'd like the Australian government to follow amongst those countries there you've just cited?
I think probably the best practice model is the UK. I think New Zealand looked at that model in setting up their commission. It's a very wide-ranging model that does provide education and assistance particularly to the smaller groups, as well as that monitoring function and advising government where they should go with the sector. I think it seems to have worked very well.
I know you're leaving Parliament. You won't be sitting in the new Parliament, Senator Hurley, so I feel you can be liberated, therefore, to give your full and frank views on how the new government will work or not. How do you see Julia Gillard faring in this new political environment?
Well, I have to say, having watched Julia Gillard negotiate her way around a number of very tricky issues in the last 3 years, I think if anyone is able to do it, it would be Julia Gillard. She is very practical and has a great ability to negotiate. I think there's no reason why, with the support of the independents in both the lower house and the support of the Greens in the Senate, that we wouldn't form a very strong government. I'm from South Australia. I've seen it work in the South Australian State Parliament, and I believe it'll work for the full 3 years here federally.
As Julia Gillard looks at who should be in and who should not be in her new cabinet, do you believe there should be a place for Kevin Rudd?
Oh, I think Julia Gillard has said that Kevin Rudd should be have a senior role in government, and I would support that.
And also, just finally, Senator Hurley, there's been some criticism, some rather pointed criticism of the Labor campaign from the former Labor pollster Rod Cameron on Lateline last night, accusing party apparatchiks of relying far too heavily on focus groups. As you look back at the campaign, is that an area where the Labor Party let itself down?
It's interesting that Rod Cameron complains about focus groups when he was, I think, one of the people instrumental in using focus groups in the beginning. I think it is a valuable tool in knowing how people think. But I think we do need a review of the campaign generally, as we always do. Look at how it was conducted and why it took the path it did. I just think a broad-ranging review would be a good step before we start making decisions about whether it was or wasn't a good campaign.
Senator Annette Hurley, thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you.